Carol and I are holding down for the women tonight.
I can't say what I want to say.
Turn the L on, the L's on.
Oh, go ahead. You're a monk, friend.
Let's start this over. We'll call the meeting to order. 4:32, we'll do it. We've got a pretty lean agenda, but it's all, mainly because we've got a lot of good discussion to have, so I'm excited to do that tonight. First thing, I'll entertain a motion to approve that agenda. If everyone has a copy and it's seen it.
I'll move to approve.
By Leon, and second by Dr. Lang. All those in favor, please obviously say aye. Any opposition? Good. Apologies on not having March minutes. Hopefully I can get them and be able to send them out with any follow-up in this meeting. So we'll just have 2 sets for March. Yeah, we'll have 2 sets to approve for May. But I think most everyone, because that's what was here in March, if they break anything, then we can work together. As soon as some visitors. So we have public comment period is 3 minutes per person. If you will, make sure you sign in. I don't know if you haven't already on the way out, but you'll allow ladies first.
Sure.
And you can come, if you want to stand here anywhere that makes you comfortable, and I'll keep some time for you.
Hello, my name is Ashley Wasser. I work for the Bear Foundation here in Raleigh. We're a nationwide company. We're a private foster care agency. And I'm here because we need help from our local community. For over 1,000 kids we have in Wake County who do not have homes. We're looking for any families, if you want to be temporary or foster to adopt. But just here in North Carolina, you have to foster for at least a year before you can adopt any child. We need respite, temporary housing, anything, because we have over 1,000 kids here in Wake County alone. And that's not considering Durham County and all the other small counties that need homes. That's basically why I'm here today. I have forms to leave here. You can call. Even if you're not interested, you might know somebody else who's interested. We have meetings about info sessions every Monday. They alternate between noon and 6 p.m. They're virtual. You don't have to come in. You can ask questions. You can call me directly and ask questions or email me directly. But we're just looking for all the help we can in our local community for our kids. Have any questions? Let me see what it is.
Do you have the information?
Yeah. Sure. I will send. I sure can. I'll send that in.
How many did you say was homeless?
Over 1,000. Over 1,000. You don't have to be married. You could be single. If you are living with somebody, you do have to be married, or you could just be living alone. But we'll take you right now because we don't have that many families in all of the community right now. We're having to send them here and there, everywhere. We're right here in Wake County, New Orleans.
What's the percentage of housing children in foster homes?
So it just varies because we get a lot of our kids from DSS too. But being that we're a private agency, we don't really get a lot of little kids. So the kind of percentage is kind of like a little off because the babies always get housed first.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have usually about 6 and up right now. We don't really get baby babies.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of 6 and up, mainly between 8 and 12. We have a lot of 8 and 12. And of course, always teenagers. So I'll say maybe about 30%, roughly.
Ask for doing this in that PDF to me, I can look it up.
Okay, I would. What do you guys want?
District E, you know? You're up.
Hi. First, I appreciate you guys being here. For me, it's really local. I live about a quarter mile from here, half a mile from here. So I appreciate you being at this point. You may remember me from before. I showed up during the summer, I think last year. I had one basic question for you, and that is how your outreach goes in terms of relating to the public. Now that CACs are back, we have pretty much the same objective as the CEB board. Ours is also to make outreach to local communities and try to move those same items of interest to the council if they require them. We cover development, we cover local events within the community. And I think we have a lot in common with the CEB board. So my question for you now is a little different. Now that CACs are back, is how you're going to relate to CACs. And I'd like to see you come up with some kind of relationship with CACs that we can use either a sounding board perhaps, or raise issues with you, or act as an intermediate with council, or you work with us, whichever way it may be. But I'm looking for some way to work with the CEB board as we move forward. Again, Larry Alfont, Midtown CAC. Thank you.
Thank you. And Larry, I don't know if you were, whenever we started this process, so we kind of initiated a way to be able to respond and have a word of comment and made a comment.
I did get a response from you from my last response last.
Okay, so that's something that we were kind of trialing, so as response about this to either something that can be proposed for you as we discussed it, or then she comes up with the let's go the process, but we will hear some of it.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. You're up too. So, Councilmember Jones, our board or council will use on update on all things city council.
Good afternoon, guys. Thank you so much for having me as usual. Updates on city council. We're talking about election reform. That's our biggest topic coming up right now. We are in the process. We just did our public hearing on that. And now we're doing another touch point, which the date has not been set yet. It is floating around as the last Tuesday in April, which I think is the 30th or the 29th. But that hasn't been set in stone yet. So really trying to get a little bit more feedback. We did a statistically accurate survey of the city and displayed those results as well. And the questions are, do we want to do 4 years, 2-year terms, staggered, and then how many seats? I think we've settled on 3 district seats, and then whether that goes to referendum or not. So that's the really biggest thing that I think you guys can maybe, if you have any ideas or thoughts on how to get more impact and more feedback on that, I want as much as possible. The possibility of it going to a referendum would give us the most, I would think, engagement. So I do think that's the way that the council is swaying to put it to a referendum. But if you can help us advocate for those meetings, there's one more before we have to make that final decision of whether it's just a decision that council makes or if it goes to referendum on those 3 topics. So any guidance from you guys or thoughts is much appreciated. You can always email me if you have my cell, just give me a call, and I'll make sure to amplify those voices up. Our next meeting is the 16th, and it's going to be a mammoth of a meeting. It's crazy. I will say, just on a personal level, this isn't sustainable. The fact that we have these meetings, which are 6 and 7 hours every time, is weighing us down. I understand that this has been the process for decades, and this is how we've always done it, but we haven't had the amount of development and the amount of change and things happening at the same time. And I don't know that it's leading to efficiency or that it's leading to good governance. We are overwhelmed. We don't see those agendas until you guys see them the Thursday before. We're not given information prior to, and so you're finding that a lot of us are getting tired and we're getting really exhausted because everything is crisis DEFCON. You know, like this is the biggest decision we'll ever make, and I don't know, my body is just showing I'm like that. We're all just exhausted. So, I don't mean to put that on your feet, say, hey, fix it. But, I'm struggling right now as a counselor. So, any thoughts or just putting that out in front of you? I don't know if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective coming from, city council. And looking at us, the volunteers, even though, well, we having a part-time city council with a full-time agenda. My understanding is really that's where the staff comes in because that's the full-time activity for y'all to give you, to line things up. I think the challenge today is still looking at doing things the way it was and trying to be more efficient, that you continually look outside the box. Where even us as volunteers, this is almost full-time work, but without some assistance from staff, you couldn't be as efficient as we are. So I think it's going to be a real challenge. I'm not sure what other cities are doing, because I'm sure they.
And there's a myriad to that question, because we've asked that, what are other cities doing? And we've looked at that. At some point, we have to just make the decision. At some point, we're like, looked at all the stuff, seen all the things. What are we as leaders going to do now? What are we as leaders going to take on? Because to your point, you are volunteers on the board. Our salary is $29,000 a year. I feel like a volunteer for this city as well. I too feel just the same amount of pressure, to a degree where we're the ones making the decisions on this part-time salary. So I'm afraid that decisions are being made that we may not necessarily put as much as we should. And then the public feels that. They see that and they go, oh, that decision wasn't, I don't know where else to train, where else to squeeze it from me anymore.
And I think your point was something that's very important to us is community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed is at what point do you receive community engagement after some decisions already made or while we're at the table while they're making decisions? Because I understand staff has to follow guidelines and regulations and all of that. They don't want you at the table. If they come out with something and say, okay, here it is, this is what you're going to do, or here it is. I think somewhere in that mix, and that's what we look at, this community engagement may help a little.
And I think that, just on a personal level, and I don't mean to take up your time, I'm so sorry, I promise I will not.
Got time for
word
you.
vomit. Utilizing or partnering with counselors as we're doing right after this, I go to my community engagement meeting. So right after this, I'm spending 2 hours with District E having a conversation about same stuff. If there is an opportunity for you guys at some point to join those, I know that other counselors are doing the same thing. What I think gets lost in translation, and we'll use the election as election reform as an example, is that a lot of residents think that we're not. I talk about it for a year. I've been pushing this for a year in my community engagement settings whenever I go and I mention this. So I have been. So the narrative that we are trying to do things in a backdoor setting and just make decisions is false. That's completely false. And to utilize you guys in that capacity, if there's ever a time you could join, so you could help amplify that and say, you know what, Counselor Patton, she is having those conversations. And Counselor Jones, here is this opportunity. How can you help us show that community engagement isn't just on the department, because they're doing a phenomenal job of going interdepartmentally and making sure that the issues are raised. It's our job to go and do that outreach as well. And we are doing that, but maybe that partnership could be a little bit stronger between council and council meetings and community meetings and the board, to where we can work better together.
This could end up being something too that in this conversation around Corico might be helpful in that capacity. As we kind of roll through that and start collecting feedback, talk about this maybe something that will help people a little bit more sharp and spear, I guess, for lack of a better term. Here's what I'm looking for. This is on why you look. What you hearing and how's that going and trying to, like, I totally get it. I bumped into Corey Branch the other day. I feel like I haven't seen that guy in 3 months. Kind of look tired. So yeah.
It's been really exhausting the last few months.
Yeah.
And we all know that. We sign up for it. I'm not at all trying to say, oh no, I don't want to do that. I want to do the job. But the amount of stuff that's coming at us and having to have an opinion and engagement on, and then the fact that we all have other jobs too, and like I said, it feels like we're volunteers too, because we're also balancing all of this. But at the end of the day, we're the ones that make the decision. So I understand the communities want to make sure that they understand exactly where we stand on things. I completely respect that. And really, it's just how do we find those opportunities where we can strengthen that engagement? And so I do think that things like this and utilizing, I know some of you are, there are specific districts and how can we better utilize that to say, all right, cool, this is my district partner and let's do this together. I don't know, I'm just throwing stuff at you. So maybe that's something we can discuss. But those are my updates and, oh, Larry.
Yeah, just one quick comment on the election discussion. There's a word missing out of the discussion and the points that keep getting raised. There's been a lot of surveys that people favor 2 years over 4 years. But the discussion now is a little different. If we're gonna go 4 years, it's 4 years with primary. And that word primary never seems to enter the conversation. I just want to make sure that we continue to bring that up and make people aware of one of the incentives to move to 4 years is to bring that. It's impossible to.
Yeah, no, that's true. There is going to be a primary with that. It's a nonpartisan primary. So they will be on both ballots in that March election in 2026. They'll be on the Republican and the Democratic. But that's in an effort to kind of push that, the field down because we can't do a runoff. So the reason we used to do a runoff when we had October elections, but since we moved it to November, our engagement, meaning the number of people who come out to vote, tripled. So for us to go back, because that's been we should go back to October off your elections. I'm like, I'm going to disenfranchise in my own district 20,000 people if I do that. So that's not an option for me. If the result is to now do a primary to balance that, okay. Also know that adds cost to everybody running to have to run 2 elections. But that's what we heard. That's what we heard from the community. And so I'm going to lay out all of where I see the issues, but where the community drives us, we will go. And I'll just send out those warning flags there. I don't know if that's great. Yes.
Where else do you get comment other than public comment every month at the city council meetings?
Where do I personally?
Not you personally, well, from your meetings, but
Yeah.
Where else does council members get that info?
I will speak because I can only speak for me. I cannot answer to what other people do. I have my monthly community meetings. I'm very active on social media. I'm out in my groups like this. I was just at substance use. I've been to CAC meetings. So I'm trying. I cannot speak to everyone. I know everyone is trying. They may do things better than I do in some regards and vice versa. But I don't think that there is a specific script that everyone follows. So this board could help streamline that. And maybe we could use that opportunity to make something that we could all follow, a script that we could follow, maybe. I don't know. But I think that's something that is worth exploring for sure. It's me.
So I have a weird question, probably. Do you all have staff that for each member, or do you all share staff?
We share staff. We each
Each have two separate staff members in your office at City Hall, help in any manner.
I don't believe so. I think that I share with Corey. Corey and I have the same policy analyst and he does a fantastic job. What I'm looking for is more than what a policy announcement gets me. I want to sit down and have a conversation with council outside of chambers, not outside of, it can be in chambers, but I'd like a spot where we can talk about growth in Raleigh. I'd like to sit down at a committee meeting where we're at Safe Vibrant and say, how do we handle safety? We just lost Liberation Bookstore downtown because of threats. We just spent 4 months talking about that, public safety in downtown, and it didn't do anything. Where can we have that conversation? And that a policy analyst can't do.
So would making council jobs be full time and pay for that make a difference?
Yes, because then those of us that have other jobs who can't be there on Wednesday and Thursday because they're working a 10-hour shift for their current job could dedicate their entire time and we could be there every day. Maybe that would help with the level of work that gets done on the council days, because right now I'm there for 7 hours. If we could take a step back and do daily meetings to where I'm like, okay, today we're gonna cover this, we're only gonna spend an hour doing this, and then tomorrow we do this. If we were full-time, we'd have that flexibility.
Is that on the?
Backtrack just really quickly.
I'm sorry.
No, fine. To what you said first about, advocating for additional meetings, you can see that they've already been set, discuss, the number of seats, just.
No, there are committees, there are 4, and that's aligned with our strategic plan. There's Safe Vibrant, Healthy Communities, Transit, Economic Development, and Growth and Natural Resources. Those are the only 4 committees outside of city council where we can sit as a body and have a discussion. So outside, because of open meetings laws, like all 8 of us could not be here. So there's no room unless I'm making 8 phone calls about every topic that we have to talk about, that we can actually get a consensus on anything.
I think the questions about what you said earlier about the future meeting about the election.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, just, when that needs to be, and really, I've heard bits and pieces. I don't think I've heard enough to have any idea what's better or worse there, and I don't know what we've got now is ideal. So I think it's a good thing to look at, but, when is that, and, you know, sort of, what are the things that are really on the table?
So for election specifically, it is staying 2 years or going to 4 years? That's a question. It's then, do we stagger them? Because if we don't, you can get an entire councilship, which is what we see over the last few elections. This pendulum just swings both ways and really nothing gets done. So 4 years staggered, and then the number of seats. We have narrowed it down because the recommendation from the study group was 1 district seat to add. But we represent 95,000 people each, and 1 district seat is not going to do anything to help. I think I have said in other meetings before that my preference was to get rid of at large, make a district and put 3 additional. So then you have 10. And in that regard, I didn't think we needed to change boundaries at all. You could just put 2 counselors per district and split it in half and say, cool, they're your new districts. Council was not in favor of that when I suggested it. So,
At least in theory.
in theory, and people say, well, what other places do that? And I was like, I'm not really, I didn't look into, I'm just trying to see what could be, what would solve boundary issues. Because right now with the 3 districts, we have to hire a team to now redraw districts. And we just did that last time, and it wasn't fun. We got challenged.
Disaster.
It was, and so we're setting ourselves up for that again.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to come up with an idea that would bring the least resistance. But it wasn't taken up, and that's fine. It's democracy. People didn't want it. They didn't want it because to put 2 in a district, whether that was at large or splitting it in half, the fear was, well, if you have 2 counselors who are opposite opinions, then let's say one's pro-development, the other one's not, then the developers only go to one and they don't go to the other counselor. And I was like, that's a valid concern. I hear that. So that's when I said, well, then split it in half and then make each district its own, and then everybody has. But it wasn't taken up. So at the end of the day, I can say this to you, and it's kind of a moot point because that was not what was voted on. What was voted on is that we're going to do 3 district seats, and we're going to have to draw the boundaries for 2026 and then redo them again in 2030 with the census. So there's a lot of, no matter what we do, it's going to be messy. So I'm not judging this process. This is the way it is, and it's unfortunate. But those are the kinds of feedback that we want to hear from.
So remove the at large?
No.
Adding 3 districts, so it's adding 3 districts plus those 2 at large.
Yeah, at large states.
That was my recommendation. But we didn't want to.
Yes, ma'am.
It's not about, you know, it's nice about
Question, but it was to be sure that if the conversation comes up to get rid of the at large, that you understand that the school will have a you get at all of those things. And the at large was managed to be sure that people in the water between stuff is got moving forward representation.
And that point was brought up. That point was brought up, and
we don't always look at it. Those things are important.
no, it's very important, and it was brought up as to the reasons not to get rid of at large. So at the end of the day, I'm just throwing out what my idea was. That is not something that was adopted. That is not something that the council took up in full. Is there another, did you have?
So we had heard of what coming through there, and he had brought up our relationship with the CACs. That's something that we talk about maybe every meeting since we started. And I was wondering if we had any additional guidance for us on that. I feel like the work that we've been doing, maybe, I know today we're talking about. I feel like the work we're doing is in like wonderful harmony with the Cs, like the same goals, but it's not like we're directly working together, and
I think that-
that's okay, but.
Sure, and my personal opinion on that is, this is the community engagement board. And I think anyone is available, should be welcome to come here and have that conversation. There isn't a streamline, so that's something that you guys can talk, just like what Larry had said. There's Robert Rice, who is the chair of the CAC, so maybe that would be a beneficial conversation to have him come in, so we can say, what does it look like? You know, instead of piecemealing it and saying, okay, well, for Hillsborough Wade, it looks like this. If you talk to the chair of the organization and develop a strategy from the top down, then you're working together, and the onus isn't just on the board, you know, because I don't want the board to take on thinking that now you have to manage and micro and work and create CACs. That's not the prerogative. They are awesome on their own, and they will be fine. But to have that partnership, just like I'm asking you guys to come to like my meeting and be like, hey, how can we create that? I think that's what they're asking. But it would be much more beneficial to have a chair of the RCAC up here so that you guys can develop, instead of looking for guidance, again, from a council that's part-time, that has all this stuff, instead of it, create what you want it to be. Say, all right, CACs, we've been here, what do you want? What are we willing to do? You know, and work that out. But that would be my
I think
advice.
that has to come from staff, because the idea and the decision to reactivate them is kind of in part and parcel of that, and it's a direction from everybody else.
Perhaps I'll just throw this out there. I've been trying to find the words to talk about how we're presented with these issues and these challenges. And one of them is that we're always presented with a problem, and there is an implicit expectation that we will come up with a solution. I don't know if y'all have noticed, but any city, any space that is growing at the rate that Raleigh does is having the same problems that we are. We are not unique. So I think it's really important for everybody to take a measure of salt in terms of how they think about the installation of this body and what it can potentially do in one regard, right? The other piece of it is, at least as I see it, and this is a distinction that I think truly exists between CACs and what the work of the CPB has been, which is we work closely in collaboration with municipal resources. That seems to be the emergence of the work that we have done. We are working with OCE. In our bylaws, there's written interactions with equity and inclusion. We just had Karen from, I want to say guest services, but that is absolutely not. You know, as a sort of customer experience manager that works within the city. So for me, at least in terms of how our work plan has emerged and all of the things that have been here since the beginning, we're really fostering a relationship with the city as a municipal structure. And I just want to put it out there, let the owl hear it, put it in everybody's awareness, because that's my preference in that.
Yeah, and I think I want to add on to that to say, this is all new for everyone. There is no plan. The board, the council that created the CEB board is only half here now. So you've got a half new council that's coming in trying to make make this all work. So we don't have a prescription. And I think that came up, I asked that the question that you raised at the city council meeting, and everyone's just kind of like, that's the response. So we have to deal with the reality. The reality is we don't know. I don't know what this looks like. I don't know what the relationship with CACs look like, but what we're trying to do is bring everyone together at this table and say, what can we do together? That's not to say that you're expected to have a response, that you're expected to do anything. It's to say, what do we have the capacity, and to have those conversations with CACs, with council going, I don't have the capacity for this. And then we go, cool. But it feels like on council side, on this side, that we're always pointing this way. Oh, no, over there. No, I don't know. I don't have a direction. I don't have this. I don't have this. And we never have enough information to do anything. And the only people that suffer are residents. the only people that are, which we are all here to serve, the reason we are all doing it. So we all have to come in and understand that none of us are gonna have the silver bullet answer.
Right, and to refine what I'm saying is that ultimately, if you look at our minutes, we are progressing and doing work that is suitable for this body. Right, like at the end of the day, there's this constant feeling that I have being able to have accountabilities that were never agreed upon, were never transparently developed. And ultimately, people walk away acting like we were supposed to do something that I'm really unclear as to what that charge was. And that's my personal experience. I've been here from day one as a new resident, renting, living in downtown. I agree in terms of like the ironies of the way that we're districted. Like there's a slice of downtown that's supposed to talk with Briar Creek. That doesn't make sense in the reality of the world, like in how we actually function. So I get that there's that piece that's there. I also think the irony of us as community engaged people, we're all busy too, holding jobs, volunteering. Some people are retiring and holding second and third jobs in their own lives here. And so I think, again, that grain of salt, the multiple grains of salt, we need to recognize that it's going to take time to make it make sense, because that's what change requires.
And it's okay to say that. It's okay to be in these meetings and have Larry come up and say, I want this, and you guys say, at this moment, we don't have the capacity. Let's look at a long-term strategy to say when we could build that capacity, but you're not expected to solve it today. And I think that everyone wants an answer, and I think everybody should come and ask. But as the board, as council, we have to be able to say, cool, that's a long-term decision that we're gonna take the next 6 months to define. But as long as we're clear in saying that, then you've answered the community's questions. Then Larry can go, okay, cool, I see that, and now we'll build in how that works.
Yeah.
The pressure, like clearly as on council, we have to make decisions, we have to do that, and I get that. You guys don't have that same pressure, and I need you to stand in that space and go, we're not ready, and that's okay too. So know that there's no judgment when you say this is too much. I mean, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, one quick comment.
I don't want to be the thorn of the side. It's really not a screen, it's not meant to review.
Oh,
Let me ask you a question, and you have.
I'm sorry, that was my fault. That's my fault.
I'm gonna put a pin in it, because one, I think we shifted out of what would be a council update into some interesting discussion of this board.
Yep.
And something that would be really great. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to make sure I'm not like, I'm here to answer any questions, but I also don't want to take up the space here. So I'm gonna back up like.
I'm glad that you had some of the time for us to talk about this. Something else that I think would be a good signal for what we discussed at our retreat and so I don't want to miss any of that today. Thank you for being honest. We are fans of trust and transparency.
Yes.
Dr. Lee does it.
So I do want to put a pin in that, not a thing to it. We can come back to that maybe. You can maybe we'll point more to the retreat. We're going with many updates. Outreach and equity have some big projects, not just for themselves, but part of the board. So I'm gonna let them take up most of the air and time today, starting with outreach.
Yeah, so let's kick it off here. We have two kind of different things to cover. One is where we're at in the political process, and what the next steps look like, and the other revolves around the social media conversation we had. So we'll start with the chunkier one, which is Cortico. So at our meeting, Nadia did tell us that we have received approval from IT, but because it is over $5,000, they have to go through a quick process of interviewing another candidate. Last we heard it was Microsoft. Dale, I don't know if that meeting happened or.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I could check it out.
Yes, but yes, and our response to that was completely understood. And also, I mean, that's a normal process in any business, but if it did come back that Microsoft in particular had a better solution or a potentially stronger solution, then we should do due diligence, take a look at that and not just try to force what we've seen so far down it, just as a result of what's happened. So, with that said, those parts are done. The next part really kind of comes back to us and kind of looking through how this process will work. So the timeline and process, we really want to get some of this stuff rolling so that as we get to the new fiscal year, and we get things going there, we're already in the process of starting these meetings and doing that versus saying, okay, well, now we've had it, now let's start. Because we know that'll take another 5 months, we'll get to November, we'll come to reason why we can't, we'll do it in January. So right now, the things we're looking at are group sizes that are both recommended by Portico and also are used by the Durham group, which is 4 to 6 people per session. And then also the process of how we will get people involved and engaged in these sessions. Some of the conversation we had at the meeting was around using a very generic or lower field category. I don't want to call it an application. It's more just a form, like a request form to participate. We talked about, name, date of birth, gender, ethnicity, number of years in Raleigh. And then was there anything else, I guess probably district, just for the sake that they'll all go to one spot so they can identify, people know what district they're coming from. We don't want to bog this down with too many questions. I saw this in the CAG process back in the fall, around the parks. We had tons of applications, almost none of them filled out. One application was 15 different people from a tennis court, volleyball, or polo bicycle event. So it didn't really do a lot. Here we just need this basic core of information so we know who we have and staff can help us address and make sure we have the appropriate people in the room. Now, this is also not to say this would be the only move, right? But we've got to start something. We're staying with the 4 to 6. We suggest staying with the 4 to 6 because that is something between Portico and Durham that has been successful. That's not to say we can't have larger scale opportunities or conversations outside of that, but in this instance, to be able to collect all that data and actually get what you need out of it, we need a smaller population. Bigger, just get spread it to this. We really need a smaller gap and we can readjust. The idea would be to start promoting this in June or July. That would give us enough time to hopefully accumulate enough people that on the other side of the fiscal year start, somewhere in Q3, we can have these meetings set up. We were talking about doing 2 in each district, because that way we would have enough spread, particularly districts that are very large. We would be able to cover and encompass enough conversation. So kind of similar to what we just heard from the council, that splitting those districts between 2,000 people. I want to make sure you capture everybody's voice. So it would be on us to help facilitate that process. Individually as board members, this is where we need help inside our own districts to help, curate these, and not curate them, but participate in them and do all those parts. I can't give you any details about the technical things or anything else yet because we're just not there. We'll get it. We do have some conversation points. We know some things, and we're trying to build a foundation around that. But we still have to wait for that process to end with Microsoft and then for the staff to come back and say, okay, this is how we want to operate. This is how we should operate. But we would be, to be clear, there's interest in the rest of this city, in particular, particularly in some of the organizations inside of government that would be interested in doing this as well. So we're kind of getting to become the tip of the spear on this. This is going to be our opportunity to try to establish what this would look like, to build a process that makes sense to collect and be able to share the information. Again, this kind of dovetails very nicely into Councilman Jones' conversation about here, you guys are getting bombarded by everything. Here's what we're hearing. If you heard the Durham stuff, these are things people just really want to talk about. Their sidewalks are busted, in the courts. We could take that data and provide them down the road. But we would be kind of I'll say tip of the spear, not guinea pig, because guinea pig feels a little rough. But we would be the ones that would lead the charge on this. And then as a result of it, either continues and or potentially expands to other departments inside the city, which we wouldn't have to be with this year. At that point, that's their project, not ours. But so that's where we stand today on this. I'm totally down having an open discussion about it and answer whatever questions we can on it. And then we can't answer them. We'll use our next meeting, outreach meeting, to try to establish answers to that, come back.
One thing that I'll throw out there that I think dovetails with where equity is in terms of our own conversations is recognizing that you want to have a small group, facilitated experiences, which I think in the world of qualitative research is really great. Because you get lots of nuance and with that size of a group, there is a much stronger sort of social orientation to how conversations develop. I think the question is how do we know that we're covering important and or key diversity metrics in those conversations? Whether or not we consider them on cultural or ethnic lines, or if it has to do with age or the same types of dimensions. So one of the things that came up in our subcommittee meeting was that OC has like an intake form that has demographic stuff that's just checkbox. And that may be something to sort of help in terms of ensuring, like, we know these people with these identifiers came to this meeting. So then you can say, here's the real gap and where we need to go.
Yes, that's a really good point. So that was kind of, I think, where I was trying to get at with the registration forms and that, but they would be uniquely identified to that meeting, right? So it's we do this once, we go to do it again. Well, this group is the group that answered this. Now this group is the group that answered this. And this group also side starts telling you where the cross hatches are, where these things meet versus how many of them are just kind of, or some of them just randomly running on their own and they don't really have an endpoint yet. Or 5 people are talking about the same thing in 2 different meetings. There's the endpoint. The endpoint is we have something here that we need to now go back and address. It's saturation, exactly, and then provide reporting structures that will allow that.
And I think the group meetings really sound good. And my experience meetings is going to get you something. So charge is to hear really what's happening in the community, is to be out in the community. So this type of question, in a way that we can carry it to community events, say a church, Barwell Community Day coming up this Saturday. What can we do immediately to get their feedback? Because there's a diversity of people going to come to these events, and there'll be tables and booths set up or whatever. It will be interchanging. And that's the time to capture it from the real people. My church had an event, this is what we really want to get to. So these group things are great, but we don't want to miss the opportunity, and which we may have already answered, but I kind of wanted to bring it out.
Yeah, I think that was where, so I didn't really explain myself well enough in that one. I said in parallel, there could be larger meetings. I wouldn't say that this is the only way that we talk.
Yeah,
that's what I should have said. Is that there's this plus, maybe we're going with the van next to go someplace where this is kind of event to say, hey, can the CEB show up to this and participate and listen or tell them what you're doing? That I would separate that and say we should continue to do that regardless and do that in that.
Well, this, I'm sorry, this question that we've been asked in the group, put in some kind of a format that when any of us go there and somebody comes by, they can quickly, we can ask them or we can give it to them to fill out and bring back. That's the kind of thing. You see what I mean?
I see what you mean. So you're thinking it's more like, so if I'm hearing right, you take your 4 to 6, right? Corticos can provide what this thing is, what then allows us to identify the strands of common, concepts that are coming back. But take that back out and go to these meetings and say, hey, we've been hearing this, and this, in this area are things that are problems. Or no, then it gives them an opportunity to say, well, sure, but maybe there's also this. And now how you delineate that data from the Cortico data is a different conversation, but I do think it's an engaging piece to kind of go out and say, we've had these conversations, here's what we've heard. Now we'd like to hear it from you as well. So at least we have our baseline, and we'll probably uncover that some of it is similar. We'll probably also uncover that some of it is not. And that gives us an opportunity to readdress maybe how we do the second, right? And we go back and we do another, because you need to build these layers over time to actually get the historical data trail that you want to have. We can't just one off and walk away, but here's the same problems. We're going to need to do it a few different times. But we can use that to shape it.
Did you invite the community into Barlow's?
Well, I think staff's gonna give us an update on that. I'll hold My discussion. This part I wanted to get out.
I wanted to ask, because I wanted to also ask for this, so how much prep did the participants need in order to understand what the conversation is and what's being asked of them? Is this something that we can do? I mean, you mentioned some of these are gonna be the 4 to 6 people conversation. Some of these might be using this tool during larger conversations, not in the same format as it's intended, but to record all that data.
Yes.
So if, for example, somebody's in the van and wanted to use Corticode to record some feedback that we were providing, is there a practice in there?
I would, so if that's something that would be a later phase thing anyway. The institution of 4 to 6 people is kind of where it is. If we decided to fan it out over time to larger groups and figure out what that was, that would be an entirely separate. Yeah, because I would have to understand how that data is collected, where does it go, how is it measured? Here, it's very kind of succinct, this is what it does. It's not to say that it can't be done, because they have said, look, it's possible, but that'd be other methods.
Yeah, I think we're starting with the recipe we're saying.
Yeah,
And then we're gonna modify the recipe.
exactly, right. Yeah.
So I mean, it's really, I mean, I think we have to look at this as, what this is a starting point, and then we will build and figure out what's right for Raleigh. I mean, what we've seen right, and I think we can recreate, and then then build off of that experience.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Well, it also sounds like Dr. Lane's point that the strategy that we have for communication doesn't have to be linear, especially if the court goes to really limited the number of people that we say out this year. So that might go back to some work and where this becomes the main portion. Essentially is a community conversation, but there were intended other parts, whether it's developing a short questionnaire by CDB that you can fill out, out to a different place. So it seems like yes to this strategy as it is, because we know that works, and it's going to be best for us in the beginning. But parallel to that, what else can we have?
Yeah,
So we can
100%.
easy access to.
Yeah.
it at the same time.
100%.
The other thing I'll point out is it don't have to be a questionnaire, folks. I don't know if you were there, community center, where we were last at, where you walked outside and there was an arts-based engagement that asked for feedback. And so you can have feedback, it could be 2 jars that say, do you want election reform? And just marble, just put one or the other. That's a survey technique. It does not, I think the biggest thing, what I love about Cortico is they're working to secure a consent-based line. So people understand that what they say is going to be used in the overarching development of the city for decades to follow. And so I appreciate having sort of that closed circuit to drive where we're going. And then we can figure out some other ways to start building the dialogue. Because the reality is the people that don't want to go to those meetings, those are the people who want in those meetings. So we've got to be building people's tolerance, building people's literacy in that space so that we can see a conversion from folks that, oh, I'm only stopping here because I came to the community day and having a good time, to wanting to be actively engaged in the civic process.
And just because the main thing is to keep it simple. So, and based on what we're saying, I go out to this community event, it's either a simple question and they get a simple answer, or it's a checklist or something, but it's standardized so that we can use the information. But keep it simple because we're going to have a diversity of individuals coming. Plus, we're also talking about bilingual or how do we get from Hispanics or Latins or whatever? We missed that. Even in our CAC, we missed that of getting that. And that's a reach out period that's still not coming. So this is why I bring it up at this point. Because again, we've been over a year and I deal with this every day, with kind of feedback. And I just want us to go forward to see how we're going to
I think we've run this as a pilot and sort of as it's outlined here. One, we'll learn a lot. I mean, I think we'll get a lot of information that we don't have from places that we're not. And 2, I think it'll inform how that next iteration of this works and runs. And, can we expand? What does expansion look like today? I think it'll answer a lot of questions. I think we've got to do something else pilot to get out of the game. And this seems like a really nice way to do that, get a lot of information in and use all of that for work plan decisions and everything else up down the line. And, you know, how can we do what we do? And also have a pretty good product. I think the product will help because during that good product, you know, you listen to that and go, oh, these are real things happening in the rural community. I think it's helpful.
I just want to recap something I'm hearing. Sounds like this is a tool for news with feedback, and putting more of the chips in the school that's not the tool for feedback. It's one of the ways that we're going to use listening feedback.
Think of it like almost like a crawl, walk, run, right? And that's kind of where that is. Like, it's like, here's this is the pilot. All through this, see what it is.
Yeah, the screwdriver before the drill. I think that's the tools are going in the toolbox.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I mean, I think it makes sense, and I don't think it's putting too much in one space, because I think if we do this and we start expanding, we're gonna have to invest. I mean, there's no way around. You know, I mean, even with something like this, getting a facilitator and getting, you know, this done well, so our first product looks good, I think it's going to require some bones into it, and, you know, some time and process.
I think the end result too is to gain trust of people in the community, because I don't think there's much trust out there, particularly with our government as it is today. So I think the fact that we listen to people and they get responses to what they were talking about, and listening to them and getting that feedback from them or to them, I think it's going to gain trust of people in the community.
Bill, you want to come into?
I just wanted to say real quick, I just got all written on it, so that demo with Microsoft will happen next week. It'll be recorded and you will share it with the which
Great. So this is piggybacking on what Leon was saying. That's the first time that we've heard listening leading to something that is different than just learning about topics that people are concerned about. And I think that may be some space that we would want to consider in terms of what are the social outcomes that we desire, to then recognize what tools we need to implement, right? Like, there's a different way, and part of it is my own background, right? As a theater educator, I have a different way of approaching technical skill building. So what it actually looks like to do public speaking and provide public comment, versus building trust and ease in certain participatory processes. They just look entirely different. And so I think that that's a piece that's sort of coming up as we look at things, where Cortico is going to be something that can build grant cases, right? Can build fundraising cases, because that is what funders prefer to have in terms of data collection, those types of things. I would say that I feel like part of the hesitancy that we have to propose things, like to be sort of front-footed in terms of offering up issues and concerns that community has, is that we haven't solidified. So there's multiple questions, I think, and conversations that are sort of happening in this space that they're not just about the listening tour. It's the listening tour is perhaps an umbrella, and then underneath that we have all of these different concerns. And so the more that we can be discerning in our own interpretations and walking into the conversation to recognize what it is that we're looking for, I think the easier it is for us to negotiate a pathway forward, because I personally am a person that will sit still until the spirit moves. Some of y'all are not that. Not to point fingers or anything like that, but like the feeling of like, this to me is a big deal and I want to focus on it and I want to move on it. And then there are impulses that other people have to like, what are we going to do in the meantime? What are we going to do now? I did that 20 years ago. I'm tired. And so I'm just not a person, like, I just want to be clear that I'm not going to be a person that pushes for that. And I'm not saying that other people shouldn't. What I'm really trying to highlight is that we're all in different places and spaces. And so the clearer we can be about what it is, what intention we're stepping forward with, and what it is we anticipate to be the outcome, then it might be helpful in sort of building coalitions and kind of moving the ball forward a little bit, in that role.
I'm gonna put Anthony and Cheryl in just a minute about Florida specifically, because as we're talking about these things, kind of to your point, there has to be a larger amount about community engagement. It's overarching. We know that Florida is an important piece of that. We know that person outreach is an important piece of that. In terms of creating that framework, how are we incorporate all these pieces that point to successful community engagement and outcomes, how we can discuss. Is Portico a big enough piece of the outreach community work that those other pieces, in-person and collateral, or activity, whatever that structure looks like, needs to come out to somewhere like a work plans of ad hoc committee that creates that framework? Or is that something that this committee?
So I would think so. I think this is something that, again, this is a starting point. This is a pilot. And this is something that I think once it gets going, we'll see what, I don't know that we can answer that question today. I think this is our start. This is a pilot to start with. This is where we're going to keep going. And we'll see. I mean, if everything works great and it is not something that's incredibly labor intensive and time intensive, then we look at this as tools we watch and we start looking at what other tools we need to line up to sure. I think if we find something else, I mean, again, it's like anything else that you start, we'll know more in 6 months than we do today, and we'll be able to answer that question really, really well. And that's a good thing to think about. It's just, I think it's way early to say one way or the other.
Yeah, I think the framework part, I think to his point, the framework of that idea is right. We just need to get it and we can do more control.
And potentially I would see it going out for other communities.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think that Anthony is currently says this is one thing, and I think we haven't talked yet about, we discussed the need of a facilitator, and I think that is going to also determine how successful we are for kind of making the most of these conversations. And we haven't yet kind of honed in on what we're asking and how those are going to be structured. I think once we start to get that and we see one that happens, we can take what we've learned from that first one and say, okay, now as we go out to the other events that Dr. Lane is talking about, we can have that discussion or some of those questions and ask what else, because I think what we don't want to do is just only focus what these people at other events have to say about the things we're asking the Portico groups. We need to know, is there other things that we need to learn about? Then from those results, we can determine, okay, we've learned this from Portico, but what have we learned outside of the Portico discussions as well? Okay. But I do think we could do more than one thing, again, if it goes smoothly. And I think to Anthony's point during our subcommittee meeting, that quality of the facilitator, I think, will help us tremendously. I hope we
can word what question we may need to ask. And I think you mentioned in the subcommittee meeting that, lead pickup. Lead pickup's a hot topic. That may be something that comes up. That may be something that we can have a direct impact on. Is that the biggest, most pressing issue in the city of Raleigh? For a handful of people, it really is.
Yeah.
And for others of us, we're like, really? This is the big debate. This made the news. Where do I live again? Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, but that could be something that came up to the top, and that could be an entry point for us to discuss with groups as we go out. Hey, look, we're looking on we're hearing conversations about this. What do you think? To gather data to at some point hand over to someone else and go, can we solve a problem in the city of Raleigh by doing this community engagement? And, while that one, is somewhat laughable because I think, for a lot of people, it's just who cares. That could be a way to solve something. We can solve other problems. I mean, some problems are impossible. I mean, just you learn that somewhere along the way. Some things are so complex you'll never fix them. But I think we may be able to find some things that we actually could fix.
So just for the understanding, outreach is something that we're all. We're working with
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and you know, and I think that might be something that we talk about, we can even put into the tree. Is there something that maybe we have to, as we're seeing this roll out, do we then maybe need to divide that out and then recalibrate how those committees sit or how that workload is dispersed? It'll probably take us up to that point anyway, really, to real feel for how heavy the lift is, so.
Well, okay. I'm listening to all of this and I think I'm a little frustrated with why people. Because I think part of this may be because of the conversation I had earlier today. I'm concerned that there are issues that are literally life or death issues that we need to be thinking about. And I don't think we need to wait 6 months. I'm thinking about you and mental health and things that we're seeing in terms of police activity and not really even getting bodies, but just people who are struggling. And how do we do that? I think we need to do outreach as well. Because I don't know that those are necessarily things that you're gonna hear at an event like activity day or reset day or things that you're gonna do in a small group of 4 to 6 people. How do we do outreach for that population? I don't know the.
So, to your point, you are 100% correct. And to the point that, the organization that I'm all time for the Chief Action Commission, we are doing that lesson conference, really statewide, really on SUD and mental health. SUD, substance use disorder and mental health. And, you know, and I can send that information out. Anybody who would like to join, sort of open to it's, midday long, that we can take credit for it and take credit. But this is that's one of those topics that is really hard. And I think it's something you have to work up to. I mean, I think when you talk about trust, you talk about building, I think as a community engagement board, there are a lot of topics that we can walk in the room and talk about and get good feedback and do that today. I think we need to build that credibility. And one of the things that I see out of this is starting to build that trust. It's starting to work into a place that we can have a more difficult conversation and talk about more pressing issues. I would like to shorten the timeline. I know for us as an agency, we've talked for 5 years about going down this conference and did 2 pilots that were 3 county pilots before we decided to launch one that was a safe version. Because it is a hard conversation to have. It's a hard conversation to bring people into. An important one, but really good one that I wish was easier to have. And I don't know that that's, I just think that's hard. So what I would love to see us do, and I'd love to see us build a credibility where we can have this conversation. We bring those people into the room and say, hey, this is really, what do we do about this? How do we do this? And I think it's just processing, and that part is somewhat creative as things happen.
I think what I'm thinking though is that part of this framework that you're building, is that it is if the Cortico or Microsoft or whoever gets to do this is a tool in the toolbox, it sounds like that's the tool that your committee is focusing on. And is it possible to have the overarching conversation at the same time that you're looking at this one? Maybe.
So this goes back to, I think, we're talking about workload capacity. So where our volunteers at the end of the day, right? And to get the tool going requires these topics may come up as a result of responses. We just don't know. The other thing we could do is we could talk about maybe potentially being asked the community and reaching out and providing information on organizations and stuff like that that can help with the process. Those points you brought up are very concurrent to me right now. Just got run over by a dirt bike last night. Like, oh, this is just the way that it is. This is, but that's me, as you see, not elsewhere. So we don't just don't know yet. And we're not certainly excluding them. We can't reach it all in one shot. We've got to find a way and then build and scale. And in order to do that, you got to have stuff.
I just want to pause and like, very much acknowledge that you have shared, but also Carmen and I think are sharing the same sentiment of we've got the tool and we fully trust that that tool is going to do well in that process. Even if we're looking at purely time between now and possibly July or August, or kind of that time frame of the year when this gets to happen, there are other things that can and need to be addressed, that was discussed. And how are we building a framework for us to address those things in the meantime that then can be used as supplements to political funds? Yeah. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
we don't want to be left with no tools and with no way to address anything, but we also have a work plan that helps discuss some of those things. So what elements are we?
Well, I just want to push out, like, we're not a problem-solving board. So when somebody brings a social issue to the table, it's not our job to make it better. It's our job to ensure that anybody that enters into that relationship can get the information that they need, that they have safe spaces where they can have difficult conversations, that ultimately at the end of the day, like, we're not emergency services. So I can't fix a problem that somebody's experiencing right there in the moment, even if they brought it here for public comment. To me, what I see the work that we are doing is setting up critical feedback. We're creating spaces where people can enter into, receive information, and be in the overarching dialogic of the city, right? And that will surface issues. It will surface places and spaces for attention. But again, it will go back to our first meeting. Many of us, yes, I think most of us were there, in that first meeting where we were talking about, hey, we want to be mindful about workload. Hey, we want to be, we don't want to be doing these big events. So let's partner with city events that are happening. Let's do this. Let's move it around. So there is something, I think, in the conversation of when are we going to put the rubber on the road and get out there and be with the community. I think that that's real. That feels very tangible to me. I just have a concern, which I'm trying to get across from both public comment and the council update. Like, we are clearly not a problem-solving body. And we agree. We haven't been that for the past 2 years. So I'm really I don't even know what to do with the Bear Foundation information except to share in my personal networks. Like, it's difficult because we haven't sculpted that. So we need to take steps back to then have conversation about that piece of what activation looks like. Great. No. But the way that it's framed right now is about outreach and workload, not the entire standing board.
No, I asked them specifically if they felt overwhelmed with taking on that burden as just a committee. And they said no, because we're not doing anything that that was the question.
Not yet,
Specifically.
but he's pointed out, which is we are not.
Yeah, and I just wanna, say that in a different way. Like I would explain it to my kids, which is a space I'm in, so to speak, spring break. And it's like, there are some organizations or boards that you would go to if you had an option to do it. I can go to my CAC. Like, if I have a problem that I want to fix, I would go there. I don't think that we are that organization. I think that our role is looking to make sure that there are those organizations, that there are those opportunities in the Raleigh community. Are there pathways for our communities to engage at CACs, at events that we can engage in? Are we making sure that as a community, no matter where you live or what your residency in Raleigh looks like, you have spaces and places that we are as a board evaluating that, and we're helping to inform council or connect citizens to other areas of government so that they can say, like, hey, we have this problem and we don't really have a way to tell you about it. And we need to establish stuff like that's we're not the problem. And so, we were talking with the councilwoman and she was kind of saying, make it what we want to make it. I hear that, but it's hard because we were born out of a call from council. And I remember in the beginning, we were told pretty specifically a couple times, like, you were meant to do this, you were meant to represent these folks. If we are truly to make it what we want, I want this conversation to be a really important one because I think it directs our decisions. Like, if we are solving folks' problems, then we need to work more directly with that customer experience. Fantastic professional who came and spoke with us and like solve people's problems, but I don't think that's it. I think that's one way that we funnel public comments if we get those kinds of comments that are problems to be solved. But we are looking at the plumbing, we are looking at how feedback, how citizens feel like they can go and share feedback and whether or not that's equitable across our community, which it's not, and that's created most of that situation that we need to address. But the framework isn't to create a space where we're solving those problems. It's to make sure that folks have an area to go to get those problems. That, I mean, are we like in agreement?
Yeah, we agree with that. We agree with that. What I don't want us to lose focus on is a good example of what we did with the comment period with city council. With that, how long this would be, 3 minutes or 5 minutes? That's a very simple one that we gathered data, made analysis, and made recommendations. That's what we do. We analyze and that's the power to make the recommendations, not to solve it, but to say, here are some recommendations. So I think we got to keep that in mind. It's not, I'm not worried about solving. If we heard the people, this is what our tool is saying, this is what the people are saying, and we recommend that some action be taken in about A, B, C, and D. You know, so the other thing I wanted to mention about us, we have to be careful. We have, when we talk about the subcommittee action team, to determine when you need an action team of the community to come in and work with you. And you put one of the subcommittee persons in charge of the action team and start getting that information from the community as you go along. You know, so you got to determine when do you need an action team. That's what I heard you try to mention that a little bit, but we set this thing up so that to help improve this community engagement net. And that's what I've been hearing here. It's how does everything fit in this network and work together? So volunteer and being efficient about what we talked about that. But I just want to mention those type of things, sure, based on what I heard.
And if I could just, I think Sarah made a great analogy to, we are looking at the plumbing, right? And all those pipes are community engagement. I think Dr. Lane's point about where we made recommendations and we helped to solve a problem or tried to, it was because that problem was directly related to engagement. It wasn't related to a crisis center problem or another problem. And I think, you know, in the nonprofit world, that's called mission creep. I think that we have to prevent ourselves from having mission creep. And a lot of times I know we all want to solve all the problems, but we are here to solve how we engage people. And I think that's important to remember too.
And then let's also be clear about blowback that we receive for public comment recommendation. And that's all the fact that nothing moved, like those things. I just think they're an important part of the story in realizing, like, we can sit here and dream about how Cortico will be deployed and how it will work. I think that, you know, for me, where I find the comfort is, are we operating in integrity? Do we have true intentions? Are we being authentic and honestly engaging in it and presenting the best tool possible? But I can't tell you what transportation is going to do with that, when they get a hold of it. I don't know. You know, and I mean, that can engender a feeling of either we need to be real distinct about what community engagement does and make sure that people know there's a difference and that our Cortico work is different from their work. Or it can just recognize that people use tools differently. And what does that mean in conversations of diversity? What does that really mean in conversations of equity? What does it really do in shaping access? And what sort of imperative does it then create for civic participation? And how do we contextualize that call to action? You know, so I just think there's multiple layers of work, and we're moving at like, I'm still waiting for bated breath for the engagement network to go live. Because there's so much that's, you know, hinged in that world. And that's where we defer to OCE and we let it be that way. And so I think there's multiple sort of like ships that are moving that we are waiting for them to arrive. I'm used to it. I've been employed with the state for a long time. I'm used to waiting and not having optimism about things actually happening and then being surprised when they do. I don't recommend it for everybody, but at the end of the day, it's not unfamiliar territory for me to be in, and the ambiguity can be very frightening. And so again, that's why I try to recognize that the work that we're doing is actually just setting up communication loops, right? Like it's just being able to make sure that people can communicate effectively, where if I throw a message out there, it's getting to people I'm trying to reach. And that sounds like it's a communications issue, but once we factor in what layers of access, like in our subcommittee meeting, one of our members came up with the idea of approaching utilities and asking for inserts to communicate. And then as a renter, I was like, but I don't get a water bill. I was really proud for the first time. To actually like to represent a renter in that way of like recognizing like, yeah, I get an email from the complex, but I don't actually get a water bill that would do that. So it isn't that we shouldn't do that tool. It is what are we doing in addition to that to cover the gap that's there. And that's what creates the equity. And so I think that, you know, again, if we frame the conversation in relationship to what's equitable, Dr. Lane brought up a great point. Only certain people are going to participate in that thing. So then, yes, we have the concern. And so I see a concern around how are we reaching those people? What are we doing to get out there? And perhaps it's the same thing as what Carmen was saying in relationship to the emergency, the crisis, the life or death things. And that to me makes sense. Like getting to that space intellectually helps me be on board. And I just want to always be clear about where I'm sitting and how I'm moving, because if I'm not clear about it, certainly I can't expect other people to understand and see what I'm doing.
Another pin, not a pin. Because I will say personally, I'm not satisfied with where this sits and understanding that I have and feel collectively about. But we also have one other thing from outreach to discuss, plus the equity committee. That's a pretty big topic on board as well. So I want to give.
Well, the social media thing, sure, I think if there is concern, you're going to say that you're not share.
I want you to discuss that so we can vote on it, so we can get it through, because it's also part of what policy committee has voted on. So I'd rather discuss that now so we can get through it. And I really want equity to have their portion of top.
Okay. Social media, that the accounts, so the wind up everything with the city. So we've gotten clearance to, and know the rules from the city on what we're allowed to create. We've agreed that we believe that Meta is the only platform in which would make the most sense. So if you're Facebook and Instagram, we would have 2 users from the board only to maintain, publish, and respond. There is the rules of engagement outlined here. I think in the interest of time, I don't know if we want to read through each individual one. But these are your standard nonprofit rules of engagement. I use these at work for strategies with nonprofits as well. So these are pretty set forward as to how nonprofits should operate or government entities should operate inside of social. We have some budget that we've not spent this year, so we were considering using it to sign for a platform called Loomly. That way we can have everything centralized in one location instead of being the native applications and have the risk of potentially getting a little squirrely.
You see that sentence again?
What's that? Loomly. So Loomly is a platform that will collaborate and pull in all the social accounts. What's that? Loomly?
Yeah.
LOOMLY. Yep. So that platform will allow us to concentrate everything in one location. And that way we avoid the potential risk of information, but things being posted that should not be. Because I've been through that nightmare too, and really get forward in my crisis. So the rules of engagement are pretty set forward and straight, right? There's a couple things that we have to discuss as a board. In particular, one thing that we've seen on social in the past is other boards or other engagement groups, individuals start diving into larger posts and kind of create a little bit of havoc. So a lot of these considerations are all based around a response, protocols, privacy and security. Accessibility is easy because that's done by the platform anyway, so we don't have to worry about that. And then really just a guideline of if we post something up as the board and commentary happens underneath that, how do we respond? Who's responsible for responding? And what are the rules of engagement for board members to either address it or just simply not address it at all on that topic to avoid any sort of kind of side havoc and stuff like that. But don't get me wrong, these are great ways for us to get this messaging out. They're good. It's an excellent tool, but if not done correctly, it runs the risk of being extremely dangerous. I think we've all seen that in the past few months on Facebook and whatnot. So I'm trying desperately to avoid having that happen. So
Backing them all.
somebody's back. Yeah, it's actually back. I was trying not to laugh. I was like, so anyways, we would like to move this forward, based on these rules, identify, go ahead. Rules and engagement. So we would like to move this forward so that we can start the process of, getting things set up, getting a Lumen account established, and ideally starting to start pushing out about our meetings and some of the other things we have going on. This may also potentially then will become an outlet for the example, the person came in today who did a public comment who asked, how can you get out and help us with this? Or how can we help spread this word? That would be, we as a board, if we agree that would be a good thing to do, then we would set that up, whoever's responsible for it. And we would publish that as something as a response for the public comment.
What's the difference between responsible to protocol and user?
It's really nuanced. Like you can probably scrap responsiveness protocol and just worry about who that's fine. Yeah. Responsiveness protocol is really, yeah, like what are the rules around? Like if somebody puts a question in there, what is it? Is the response will direct you to this kind of like we do now, or is the response a standard templated one that says, thank you for posting this, our next meeting is hosted at blah, 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 and you know, public comment section where you can come and discuss it there. And that would be kind of your standard plan.
So, if somebody posts profanity or, you know, something that is, you know, so you don't, we would not delete anything unless it was, you know, a community standards issue. So, you know, if somebody posts something and it's the worst thing in the world and it's not obscene, you keep it, whether or not you respond to it, you know, and, you know, user engagement is probably the more constant thing.
Yes. No, yeah.
So responsiveness is really our protocol, more thinking of us as an organization, and user engagement is like how the board engages.
Correct.
And for at least, you know, this does mirror nonprofit, and, you know, for us, I have someone that posts on our page and other stuff. We politely ask staff to respond. And the reason is we have our thing to get in and, you know, so I can, you know, if I see something, I go, oh, I want to say this, I can, you know, Slack who runs it and say, hey, you know, what do you think about this as a response? And she's a much better writer than I am. She'll craft something that sounds good and put it out there. But what we would probably is all of us expressing individual opinions or going, well, I'm on the board, but this is my personal opinion. No, you don't, you lost that. You're part of the board. You know, so, you know, you would talk to one of the two people that's on there and go, I kind of like to say this, throwing it out there and let them make the decision, because you can, yeah, you can get there. She.
This proposal would
Wrap in your hopes that.
outline.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
also like to ask that there be some, and I don't know if it falls under user engagement or what have you, but it does go back to the Bear Foundation. Like I think maybe perhaps developing criteria for what would qualify as something to share. So that people have a clarity in terms of interacting with us, because there are certainly things that we as a board will think not to repost or something like that. And then the other thing I just want to be really mindful about is that accessibility as a practical function is taken care of in terms of supposedly everybody being able to have to read aloud and all of that kind of stuff. But if you actually do research into accessibility in social media marketing and communications, there's actually multiple things that tie to that, where it's like you have text, you also have, if you've got a photo, there's a caption that describes it for people that are visually impaired. Those things are not monitored on websites and in social media. So I just want for us to be mindful as we're talking about accessibility, realize that we're putting a stake in the ground for how far and how much we're willing to do to meet folks where they are, and just putting a little bit more intention on that.
And usually just on the business side for a second, when we're talking client stuff at the strategy standpoint, remind them that inside of each platform has its own accessibility criteria, switches to tags and stuff like that. So users on those platforms can make those decisions and switch things on and off based on what they want viewed. It's not on the side of the deliverable. We don't control how that process gets delivered to them. It's here's the example, here's the post. If I'm a user in the Instagram, for example, if I turn on an accessibility feature, we'll do that for me. But that's pretty common.
And the only concern I have is just the ROE, who recommended the WCAG to spell that out.
Yeah, I can adapt that.
Also, just to clarify, this is not the final thing. These are things that y'all are going to talk about and flesh out.
Hearing that there are edits.
Well, I mean, yeah, my thing is definitely like,
These are just, this
this
is outline.
is guidance for the development of the policy, correct? Okay.
Okay, so yes, during our meeting, it's in the meeting notes.
I think we talked about best practices.
Yes.
This is like a proposal, but these aren't really best practices. And that's what we're asking, what we still need are the best practices.
Like I think in an ideal world, whatever this thing is, could be handed to somebody to say, here's how you could effectively manage social media for the city. Okay. And I don't think that that's there.
Sure. I think there was maybe some confusion in that. We request policy statement to create social media best practices. Tom will provide that's best practices. So that is what we created. Whether or not on the admin side that was being discussed or not, I don't know. I think ideally, maybe we would take out of this is what we need to do so that in the next meeting, we're ready to make a decision. And move it, because by then it's May.
So bringing back to the testing, so all of these, the first letter is, your first word is an action. So establish clear process does not mean what the first one there, outline. So each of these will become something bigger that are more specific. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is what I'm getting from this too. This isn't the how to make a social media post best practice.
Right.
Like, yeah,
This is like what I put in.
This is a little bit broader.
I said, give me a template, in the template, and then I had to go back and ask.
Okay.
Add specific stuff.
Okay, so I guess, sure, so to fix that then, this would be in my world, what we would have delivered as that, as a proposal of how these things are run. That's how I approached it. It has to be approached differently, I can change that. I just used basically the guidance from what we do.
Yeah, I think the question is who's establishing a clear process? That's what's not clear to me.
Right.
Is that something that sits in?
That's right.
One thing, you just clarify that,
Yeah. What's that?
you just asked, but.
Yeah. Right, I mean, I get it. In terms of what what's there, I don't see a clear process for review and approval. I see that it's supposed to be established. So it implies that there's work that happens. So who's doing that work is my question.
I think that's what we thought that was doing something, and that we were, as of the last meeting, we were just providing the practices. Was discussing what to do next.
So let's go from the top. Let's go from the top. So equity was not part of this process. The policy. So this document is meant to sit, and this is the written here stuff we discussed. Thank you. This is meant to live as part of the forget what we call information sharing policy for the board. So in that includes email, who has access, how you get access, XYZ, and also social media, who has access, how you get access. And then within that says, if you have access to these forms of media information, how are you using them as possible? So we have that kind of established for things like email, but for social media, especially because it's a new portion of it, there was nothing established to say, this is how you respond, this is how you don't respond, this is how you make sure that the post is equitable and shared. And so that's the charge for the outreach committee. So if these are sort of the wishes of what that looks like, then it sounds like there is an ask for specification of either fleshing these out to say how you do, like how the process of establishing and outlining and all of that is, or just say, this is what you do.
So
Without creating
that
a process.
okay. So
Yeah, does that make sense?
So really, yeah, I also feel like it doesn't have to go back. It's just not, it's not clear to me because I thought we were looking at the new social media policy. That's where my confusion was.
So it should go back then. So we'll take it back to the next review and use that as a.
In the meantime, because there's a clock on this that I think we need to be on. Purchasing the software, we can do before the end of June and get it into this budget. And if we're running out of needs to make that happen. So if that's something that we can do sooner than not, knowing that we do all social media and then ironing out the process before we open up a page or send the first lead all into it. Awesome. So making sure that we, so I think if we can make that proposal in this meeting and vote on it and get that process started, we'll probably in a better place, knowing that this is something that we able to involve, and then we can take a little bit of time defining things and ironing out the process and making sure we got it right.
So that sounds like a game.
Oh, it was a rough roundabout way. Yeah. So if I were to turn that into a motion.
I would make a motion that given that we have a high level of trust in Anthony and Tom's ability to make social media posts, we don't need to wait.
You just heard me call it Facebook.
Okay. Then one of us are gonna do that, not me, but I think we've had experience enough that we could start that process and make the post, understanding that best practices of what those posts entail and should have is forthcoming, so that Anthony can go ahead and get the lovely Loomly subscription. So
Anthony does not, also not want the Loomly, I just want us to have it because I think.
oh, well, then I guess, I guess that's the question, who's gonna do
You
this?
made that as a motion. I want to be clear. No, I'm serious. That's what you said. I would like to know. So I want to be clear on what your motion is.
My motion is that we go ahead and purchase the Loomly to get social media posting started. However, I do think we needed to
This is,
discussion on who's posting.
so you are making a motion.
Made a motion to go ahead and purchase Mooney.
For social media postings.
Okay,
So there is a
second on that as it's been. Leon. Discussion on that specific motion to purchase Loomly.
I just have I would suggest that we adjust it and say, let's buy the subscription, but we don't have to do listing.
Yes.
Yes, that's what I was.
That's what I meant to say.
There we go. So let's adjust the motion and just say we are. Cheryl, I recommend that Cheryl's motion is that we purchase the but that we don't do any posting until we approve. That way we.
This is by no means me being a stalwart. This is just me asking why we were.
Because the other one costs 10x what that was. There's really only 2-3 platforms that do this now.
Hootsuite, Loomly, and then
Express Social.
Yeah, crowd social,
Yeah,
that's Hootsuite's almost dead. They're gonna get bought out and probably die the next month anyway. So.
Yeah, so and just so everybody's aware of what the software does, you get the software platform, so you're not giving direct access to the individuals that are using it. So you'll have 2 licenses. Those folks will be able to access an interface that is not direct to Facebook and make posts. And it prevents anyone from accidentally posting, getting on their Facebook, thinking they're on one and, hit another, or, going rogue and go, oh, let me change the password to get rid of everybody. It's a preventative layer to make sure that we don't have something happen that we don't want to happen.
It also streamlines the workflow because you're pushing from one place instead of.
And you can schedule, there's a lot of advantages to, yes.
There's one meeting, it's 100, but you have even more, like $10 a month and it connects to the Facebook, the Instagram, and LinkedIn. And it does all the things, and then I only have to put it in one, in like, I can schedule like anything.
I'm gonna be honest with you again, I'm gonna default back to, I know just enough from what I've purchased for my office, and that's it. So I was able to describe it because I've had someone describe it to me. But, and I've seen it work. I mean, I don't stand back and completely do it. I just don't, I'm not in. So, and I think that's my job.
It's super secure, right? The $10 and $5 ones. Much among it anyway, because those are going to be leaky. This one is locked down and secure. That's kind of part of the reason.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna give Valerie one minute. So
Yeah, we could move on. Just a staff level of clarification, just because I don't want us to be in this discussion to be forced to move if we don't have to. My understanding of the budgeted funds that we have from year to year roll over, they live in perpetuity, and it's not like suddenly it's going to be pulled out from underneath us.
So they do not lose.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was the point of trying to get this forward. Is it?
I had received different information.
Yes, it's not T-Mobile. We do not have rollover meetings.
there's a motion on the floor to purchase Loomwood. Motion made by Cheryl, seconded by Leon. We've had discussion. And then
And there was a
posting until the meeting.
and I'm gonna ask Cheryl to restate or amend her motion.
I move that we, approve funds to purchase a subscription, an annual subscription to Loomly, acknowledging that we will not be posting until we have accepted best practices.
Did it say request, approve request of funding?
Can you just remember?
So when you get.
Amended motion, I don't even know, did we even second on that?
I'll second
So all those in favor, of purchasing Loomly an annual subscription, acknowledging that will not post until best practices for social media are established, please obviously say aye. Any opposition, or say nay?
Madam Chair, that's not fair. Dissent is allowed to exist.
We've got another thing. Thank y'all so much, and I'm glad we got this moved on. One part of it, Tom, who's also now the outreach, sole outreach chair, take that back to your community.
Yep. Yeah.
Equity. Another big topic, which I'm sure will roll into another meeting, next month. I'll.
Okay. Good afternoon, evening, everyone. So the equity committee had our meeting last Wednesday. And it's pretty much to discuss the tabs that we received from TODA, which was to essentially help the April leadership of the minutes that will help.
Yes, there's.
TODA is TODAH.
Yeah,
That's my question.
that's Dale.
That's a,
I'm sorry, I still haven't found out.
yeah.
I know it's
We tried to look it
transit
up and it was,
overlay district,
Transit. Open.
district association of, I'll figure out the A names.
Yeah, because if you just Google it, that did not was like. I'm just gonna let you
It's
guys.
associated with affordable housing and that's what this is.
Yeah, so, TODA, excuse me, access to essentially, remember we had the presentation and they had the slideshow and it kind of showed the overview of some of the projects that they are currently working on. And then kind of what they're asking from the community engagement board. And, us as a community engagement board then decided to give that lovely task to the equity board and now we are here. And so the meeting was essentially to go over what they're asking us for and, yes, that's what we did. Let's see. So we were asked to, give recommendations on how to come up with an action team that will be separate from CEB. And we have the list of representatives that they want. So 3 community representatives, 2 nonprofit representatives, 2 community engagement board representatives, 2 subject matter experts, 2 TODA executive leadership members. We will not be picking the TODA leadership members and also the CEB members will be open to everyone. We received a meeting to be on that. And so during this meeting, we really wanted to get a baseline for that and then started going into, well, how do we make it equitable to send it out to the people that may be interested in these positions and what that looks like, whether it's email or through utilities, like how do we really get to the people that we want to be, you know, like a part of this action team. And what they also asked us to determine like the length of term for each person, which brought up the question of like, what is the timeline for maybe these particular projects? And is it a 6-month thing or, you know, a 12-week thing, you know, like trying to figure out more questions like that. And then someone brought up the amazing point that like, if the action team gets 50 applications for support and we're asking the action team to go through everything, what does that workload look like? How much time are they spending during the day? Are they divvying up the work where you get 10, you get 10, you get 10, and then we report back on those 10? And also, is there a budget from TODA to the action team on whether they get paid for their time doing this? Because there are a lot of organizations that apparently are paying their members when they spend, you know, half days, whole day going over super important information like this. So that was one of the questions that we had. We also wanted to bring back in Dan. Wants to bring back in Dan because we had some follow-up questions for the just so we could get some clarity. So hopefully, if you guys have questions, we'll be able to answer those questions. So we are planning on inviting him to our next meeting. I don't know if that has already went out to him or not. Cool. All right. And that is kind of, you know, where we are. We really just started this process. So we're still very much in the beginning stages. But any questions? Oh, and I wanted to make this really clear because I was having a hard time understanding this. The equity board is going to be choosing the process or creating the process of how the action team is created. Once the action team is created, they will go through any programs or things that want support, and then it will funnel through to the community engagement board, and then we will give our recommendation to TOTA on which programs and things to what. That is kind of how that circle of focus.
Think we'll review the request.
For the action team goals?
We'll review those requests.
So they're gonna have a list, say, of 50. They're gonna,
Applications.
applications, sorry, applications, 50 applications. They may narrow it down to 10. We then get those 10, and whether we say all 10 we want to get funding, then we tell TOTA, you should fund all 10 of these programs.
You said we, you mean the action team or
The community engagement board. What's that?
So the action team is providing, they're taking applications and providing a list of recommendations. There's some movable pieces in there having to do with TOTA and what their funding priorities are and those types of things. So that's why, like, when I take the minutes, they're structured in this land of what we know, what we learned, and what we need to know. So you'll see that in the what we need to know section, there are probably a lot of questions that resonate with your own minds because that came up. So check those in terms of, oh, okay, if it's there, we're going to be asking them. But essentially, there's an application period. Those applications come in. The action team is comprised of folks that supposedly have, they have a purchase in being in there. And that's where we are in the conversation. It's like, who's in that room? How do we get them in the room? What does that look like? They look through that list of however many applications and recommend the projects that they think should qualify for funding. We're still at a point, like, because this is the work that I did with Arts Council in terms of like moving funding, public funding requests and that kind of things. There's a variable in the sense of, it could be that we give to the action team, they have $400,000 they're trying to make. So let's try to get rid of the $400,000. And then they're going to pick a bunch of applications that could potentially add up to $400,000, or as what happens in most like arts councils and that type of sense, like who has a good proposal, let's recommend that. Then we as a full board will refer the ones we think qualify, sit in the pocket over to TOTA. TOTA then still has the opportunity to veto and only fund certain ones.
So just because we recommend it doesn't mean it's gonna absolutely happen. It's just, we hope that you listen to us and all the communities that we did. Okay, yeah, sure.
So as we go through this with this action team referral of ones that they must, review. They have a criteria that they're using to evaluate applications. We use that criteria, we develop criteria that we're going to use to approve, to recommend the one to approve.
So I think the equity board is also tasked with making sure they have the criteria in which they are.
That they're used for this, but
using.
then they turn it to us.
Then they turn to us, and we can use the same process.
Well, I mean, we gonna sound like what we have. Want to get in, how we gonna approve the one that we're gonna send. We're gonna use their criteria, we're gonna need some additional criteria. Otherwise we're just doing it twice.
Right, well, what I would offer is oftentimes the additional criteria in that phase, the referral phase, generally is budget constrained. It is attached to what's realistic or looking at what would be called a drop off, right? So let's say your initial reviewers, your first panel is looking at applications and they have a maximum score of 20. Part of what we do in the process might be to say, we're absolutely not going to fund any applications under 14 points. If you don't get over 14 points, like it can absolutely be that way.
I just want to know, are y'all gonna, policy committee gonna develop that, or y'all gonna develop criteria first? That's what I'm just, we get there.
There's a layer that looks like it's conversation.
Okay.
But we have had conversation about when
we are going to 100% reach out to the other subcommittees to ask for their assistance in this process. 100%, just to get that. Yes, ma'am.
So this is just an ignorance question. I'm not sure for y'all here. So are these the kind of, are these the kind of things, or these, will this set up our role also as the school, what we do this? I mean, does it help other parts of the city come up?
So we kind of had a conversation with them, not at the last meeting, but separately about, I would just speak for myself and, you know, how I personally feel. I feel like this is a really good base starting point, to help give the CEP credibility for what we're able to do and what we've been asked to do. Like, I think it's a really good reflection on us to have a part in this process. I don't know if that's what we're setting ourselves up for in, you know, in the long run, but I feel like it's a really good, you know, it's good for us.
I think one part of the initial thought was to find an entity that is a little bit separated from the direct government entity to allow for it. It's like truth, trust and transparency in the process and in the funding. But also is equipped and kind of stands on pillars of being able to outreach, making sure that this is a political process and being sure that you're following kind of what we've got. So we're kind of that, almost like the stepchild, but they trust us because we're a little bit separated. There's a point of separation that gives us a little bit more credibility on the phone. So I think that's where establishing this governance action team in the way that we have built out everything, non-partisan in such a way. I don't know if that's like setting precedent for this to be continuous, but I think that's why. I think that's why I think as well.
Two things I'll offer. One, this initiative is a substitute, or at least as far as I can tell, it's a substitute for participatory budget. So it's a way for the community to have voice. And so I think that's one of the reasons that we were asked. And then one of the reasons why I said what I said about collaboration with municipal, it's still driving. At the end of the day, whatever we present and propose to them for the process, they can still disrupt it. If we get to referrals and we say, we want, you know, these 20 applications are so wonderful, and they're like, no, we just want to do 10. Because this one, you know, like they still have the ability to set the funding priorities in terms of whether that tracks with transit. Like that's what the current efforts are doing, sort of as they're working on that, that Newbern corridor. Thank you.
Bus traffic transit.
Yeah. As they're working on that, that's where their priority is, like, how can we fund, maintain the community's identity underneath that effort? So it's complicit with development. So if you're not a fan, like it's that piece of it. But that's one of those why I said what I said, because I think in the work that we're doing, we're collaborating with the municipality more than we're doing anything else. And so that feels like, this feels right to me sitting with us, because I think as a funder, you want to work to erase yourself from the decision. You want to take the bias out, take all of the things that can lead to different ways. So outsourcing the development of the criteria and the process to build the decision making is intelligent, at least on that level of like being able to say, well, we took what the community, I mean, it might lead to fire for us later, but you know, we took the community engagement board's recommendation. But it does seem like that's something that to me looks like a true hit.
So again, this is like literally doing step one, since this was given to us a year ago. The retreat was just before the academic. So you've gotten this PowerPoint. If you want to refer to it again, it's the sort of favorite public project community support fund. I'll send it out again so you can review it. It has kind of a loop of information and sort of authority of how this works, as well as all the criteria with Trey and the FDOT committee are building on how to get part of this action team that reviews these applications that they bring to the community engagement board as recommendations, and then eventually into the But I'll send it out again since it has been.
And we have a consolidated action items, which if you look in the what we need to know, there's definitely a question for outreach that's embedded in there. There will absolutely be questions posed to policy as we go forward. And I can also, at the end of the minutes, I summarize action items as well, so I can pull those out. If y'all wanted to operate that way, totally makes sense to me. I did get out.
We're about to, don't worry.
But also I think that poses a question perhaps for us as a combination of standing committees. How do we want to handle handoff? What does that look like? In terms of, is it a full-on handoff or what have you, do we anticipate, so this is a real question, do we anticipate that happens in standing committee updates in the working meetings? That seems to be our current practice, but I'm not sure if that's.
It seems appropriate to that whenever the next.
Also, we do not have a hard timeline. Okay. For it, as well, are we on, I'm on this afterwards to get back from maternity leave.
Yes.
So, there's no hard fast, like we have to get this done.
We've had conversation of let's make sure that we have something laid out by June, just in case July 1 rolls around. We gotta go, friends.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna be left flat-footed, but we do not have clarity because these funds do roll over.
Yeah.
And the city manager's office is not quite sure the funding level yet, for fiscal year 25 for this project, but we'll know more as we get closer to it in June.
So we're converging.
We have a single minute left. We have a single minute left. So quick, old business just for updates. One, we're not aware, Amber resigned from the board at the last meeting. Amber. She said she didn't like me. She was interested. I'm just kidding. It's for her own personal reasons and she's been wonderful and wants to still be engaged, but she resigned. We have since added a new board member who's not able to make it tonight, Veronica. So she will be taking his place, Tandra's place. And so we still are at 15 with one space to now fill, with Amber's absence. The next thing that will be important for us to discuss, I guess, when we may be our retreat. So be thinking of that, things that you may not appreciate if they will then. I will spend anything else I have to say and let Dale give a quick staff update before we even turn a little bit.
Can we extend?
You can make
Maybe
the
in a
motion.
minute, I make a motion that we extend at least 10 minutes.
And so, yeah, I have to go to the neighbor.
Okay, we'll take the one.
The motion's on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna count that as not passing. Dale, if you'll give the staff update and then we'll.
Yeah, it's just a quick step on this. So we'll be at Barwell Road Community Center Saturday morning for Barwell Road Community Day. Anybody wants to join? We'll have a table out there. We'll have some information on it. You all want to join to give out some information about the Community Engagement Board. Please join us there. We'll be on the City Council next Tuesday. We have our presentation on the alternative response model. And hopefully council will tell us to move forward with that. The language access team will also be at council. Well, no. I'm sorry, I just found out that they got pushed back. Councilmember Jones said it's a crazy agenda next Tuesday. So they got pushed back, but I believe they're gonna be moving forward as well with the language access collaborative in getting that going from the city.
So will you send information about the forward and
Yes.
You want this,
yeah, I'll get the detail.
Sorry for the quick and fast, but any other things?
I just want to make a motion. I can't do justice with somebody giving a report on me. So I'd rather not even comment on her if things get moved ahead. That's what I'm saying.
Fair motion.
Oh.
Yeah.
Carmen's made a motion and a second
Second.
by Tom, all those in favor? Any opposition?